Hi. So today is going to be focusing on ankle strengthening. This is for a friend who requested something. So we're going to be doing a few exercises just sitting here. And a lot of this is just orientation and orientation of our anatomy and our body and how we move. So when we do come to standing, we can still be aware of what we're doing. So these movements that we're going to be doing, done in physical therapy, they're done with cars mobility, they're done in yoga therapy for a very long time. And we're just going to just work our way through it. It'll take a few minutes to begin. So bring your hips up on top of something, maybe a low, something that'll just pick your hips up a couple inches off the ground. So rather than sitting on the mat, just getting yourself up a little bit. I'm going to start with my right leg in front of me, right foot's on the floor, and this left leg can be out to the side, any place that you feel comfortable. You can always bring a block or something underneath your knee. So we're looking right now just to tap into a little bit of anatomy. We're going to find our kneecap here, that little round cap right there. And then taking your fingers, just tracing up and down. There is a nice healthy piece of muscle over here. So we just want to kind of feel that. And then on the other side, over here, it's more bony until you come around behind as the calf, and then it attaches down into the Achilles. We're going to look right now for this ridge right down the center of the shin here, this kind of ridge right here. And then following it all the way up, it's going to kind of round out. This is the top of the shin bone. It's going to round right here, and then there's a little soft spot, and then the kneecap. So what we're going to be paying attention today to is this round spot right here. Some like to put one finger on it. I like to put my index and middle finger on either side, so I can really feel the movement of this bone, the top of this bone. That's the top of the shin bone. So what we're going to look at to see is what it's like to move the foot and what happens with this bone when we move the foot. So a lot of times we move the foot to one side and that bone shifts over, and then if we shift to the other side, the bone shifts. So if my toes move to the left, that bone kind of moves to the left, and as my toes move to the right, the bone moves to the right. You press down into the foot, sometimes you can start to feel it shift. And for me, mine wants to shift to the right. And then if you pull your foot forward, you're probably going to feel it shift a little bit to the left. Most of us will. Not everybody, so. And then go ahead and just lay that foot down, just making yourself aware of how much that top of that bone moves as you move your foot. So we're going to really isolate the movement of the ankle by not letting this bone up at the top move at all. It's going to really limit how much you move your foot now. So holding that bone in between your fingers and pressing down into not just the ball of your foot, but also the toes, until you can feel the ball of the foot and toes pressing in, and holding that bone up here so it doesn't shift right or left. You may want to reach down and you can feel the Achilles getting really active here. And then go ahead and release, taking the heel back down to the floor. And then begin to pick your foot up without letting that bone move one way or the other. And then go ahead and press it back down. So just let your knees shake out, give your leg a break a second, and we're going to come back. Letting your foot slide out until you start to feel a little bit of lightness underneath your foot. If you've got a really stretchy top of the foot, sometimes you can go out pretty far before you feel that lift. So we're just going to go out until you start to feel that sense of lightness. And then that's your range right there, and that's where we'll be doing this exercise from. So bring your fingertips back to that spot. And once again, press down into the ball of the foot and the toes all at the same time without letting that bone move. Take the heel back down. And now bring the foot up as far as you feel you can without letting that bone move. Mine's kind of wobbling from side to side as I bring my foot up towards me. and then placing it back down. So now we're going to keep the ball, the whole foot on the floor, and invite the toes to rotate towards the outward laterally without letting that bone shift. And then take it back to center. We're all going to be moving differently. And inviting the toes to move more medially, keeping the toes and the ball of the foot. So we haven't rolled onto the pinky side. If you roll to the pinky side, the bone moves out. So keeping the ball of the foot out, letting that bone shift to the inside, and then bringing it back. You may get a cramp in your arch. Don't be surprised if that happens. So then we'll go ahead and press the ball of the foot into the floor. Keep that bone from moving. Picking the foot up again. This is slow, without letting that bone move. Bringing it back down to the floor. Turning it out without letting the bone move. Pinky side of the foot stays on the ground, so we haven't lifted. And then to the inside. So we'll do that a couple of times. And then, holding that bone steady, we're going to rotate the toes to the outside. Pick the foot up, finding flexion, not letting that bump rotate. So you've got to find that magic spot, how much you can pick the foot up without letting that bone move as you rotate through. Bring it down to the floor without letting that bone move. Ball inside of the ball of the foot touches too, and then sliding back. So we'll do that 2 or 3 times to one side, and then in a circle, and then we'll go counterclockwise, bringing the toes in without letting that bone move, picking the foot up, rotating through. And one direction may be a lot easier to do than the other. Just realizing that. Just moving the ankle now. And then go ahead and release. Let go of your foot, your ankle, wiggle it around. And that what you would do then is go to the other side, obviously, and do the exact same thing. And don't be surprised if one side is much easier to do than the other. So you always want to start first by just orienting yourself with the anatomy, and then let that foot slide out until you feel it lighten. And then you'll begin those movements of pressing the foot down, bringing the foot up, then get out medially, laterally, and then medially, and then start the rotation 2 or 3 times in each direction, and then release. So right side, left side, make sure you're doing it equally. So once you've done that, right side, left side, you can always put this little video on pause while you're doing that, or just rewind it and do the exact same thing on the other side. So once we finish with that, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a break, and you can move that bolster or whatever you've been sitting on, and we'll come on down to the ground and just get a little bit of warm up before we come up into standing. So letting yourself come down to the ground, letting your feet rest on the floor. So your soles of your feet, your heels are somewhere between seat bone and the outside of your hips. So we don't want them right up or way out. Somewhere between the outside of your hips and your seat bone. So that you've got about 2 or 3 inches there to play with. And finding good posture, center of the pelvis, shoulder blades, back of the head. And then just getting a little bit of pulling the knees in. Let's just lightly warm up the back. A little bit of in and out. So I like to, at this point, hold on to those little bones right there. Just kind of seeing where they are. Pulling in and out a few times. There's no rush on this at all. Maybe when you draw the knees in next time, stay there, take some deep breaths into the back. And then releasing both feet to the floor. We're going to keep that hip or seat bone distance apart. Just inviting the right knee to drop out to the side, kind of rolling over the pinky side of the foot and coming back, and then the opposite side. So just letting the knee drop out and being sure that we're not rolling onto the side. We're keeping the back of the pelvis grounded. So as right knee drops out, back of left pelvis stays on the floor. And then opposite side, left knee drops out, back of the right pelvis stays grounded. Just back and forth a few times. Maybe 3 times, 4 times to each side. And then letting yourself rest in the middle. And then still feet seat bone distance apart. Go ahead and let both knees just rock out to the side. You're on the pinky side of your foot. Arch side of your foot's turned a little bit more towards the ceiling. And just take a few moments here. Go ahead and let the knees close, and left leg can slide down the mat. And we'll draw the right knee up. Taking that right foot to the ceiling. Now, if this is a lot on your hamstring or your back, just go ahead and bend that left knee. It could be done with the knee bent or leg down the mat. So we're going to bring our fingertips back to that little bone here, and everybody will have different flexibility in the hamstring. If you are super flexible, I suggest backing out just a little bit. So we're going to do just what we've done. We're going to take that bone and line it up straight down the middle of the shin with the second and third toe. And start pressing through the ball of the foot until you can feel you've extended that foot as much as you can go. Feel that Achilles get activated. And then bringing it back towards you without letting that little bone move from side to side. And then stopping a couple of times, just going back and forth a few times, feeling that movement. It's nice and slow. Maybe 3 times, point and flex. Watch the movement of that bone. And then we'll hold the foot flat to the ceiling. So if you've got super stretchy calves in here and you can really pull those toes forward, try to stop so that your foot is more flat to the ceiling. Feeling that little bone right there. And then we'll get that rotation of the toes a little bit outward and then inward without letting that bone move. So the movement is very still. I'm going to turn this way. So here I am. The movement is very little. For me, it's very little. Maybe someone else has a little bit more movement. But without letting this bone move, this is about it for me. And keeping my foot flat to the ceiling. And then I'll go ahead and point, pull, rotate out, rotate in. And then we'll make that full circle without letting that bone move. 2 times to each side, each direction. Slow it down. Making sure you're getting that full extension, coming around, don't let that bone move, and then once you come back around to that flexion, foot flat to the ceiling, reverse. Watch the movement of that bone. This is just the ankle that's moving. One more time in this direction, watch the toes, try to push through the ball of the foot. And after 2 times, go ahead and release. Bend your knee in. Just kind of wiggle that foot around a little bit. Loosen it up and release to the floor. So we'll do the same thing to the other side. So again, you may want to just pause, rewind, and just follow the same instructions we did for the right leg, doing for the left leg. And then again, always give yourself a little bit of a chance to, wiggle out that ankle when it's finished. Give yourself a moment to pause after the left side, and then just rolling yourself over to one side, coming out nice and slow. And if you'd like to, you can bring the blanket into the center of the mat. We'll just be on our shins for just a few moments here. Bringing your knees into the center of the mat, blanket. Hands underneath. So we really want to go ahead while we have this opportunity to find the top of that shin bone again. So we're not in the kneecaps, feet soft. We want to press down into those shin bones. So we're really putting some energy into the tops of the feet, where your shoelaces would be if you shoes on. And sometimes when people first point their feet like this, they get really big cramps, and that's okay. If that happens, just curl your toes, release, and come back. Sometimes if you just stay with the cramp, that cramp will ease up. So we're going to keep and feel the points, that top of that knob that we've been working with, into the ground, so feel it. And then begin to, without letting your knees move out or your shins move at all, turn your toes towards each other, foot flat to the ground. And then sliding out, we're going to do the opposite. Toes are going to turn outward. Feel where that little knob is and not let that knob move at all. My feet are hardly feels like they're moving at all, but I can really feel this. Don't let that little knob move, and the feet are going to turn away from each other, sliding across the top of the foot, and then back towards each other. Do that a couple times. Nice and slow, we're not rushing, knees aren't moving, hips aren't moving, thighs aren't moving, nothing's moving but the feet. Maybe nothing more than a ½ inch in movement. And after you've done that a bunch of times, go ahead and curl your toes and sit yourself back into your heels, letting the soles of the feet just stretch out. And then from here, we can pull that blanket out, finding our way towards standing, and you just choose how you'd like to get there. You can go ahead and maybe push through a little down dog if you'd like to, or just simply step forward, coming into a little bit of a forward fold here, maybe hand to elbow, just hanging out the back. And this is a great time to take a look at what direction your kneecaps are facing. So we're really inviting the center of the kneecap to try to line up with that second and third toe. You may need to walk your feet further apart for that to happen. And then bringing hands to thighs, or if you've been in down dog, or however you've chosen to come all the way up to standing. And once you're there, I'm going to see if you can find a little piece of wall or something that you can just rest your fingertips on, so you can pay attention to letting your head look down and without losing your balance. We're looking for our feet to be, again, seat bone to hip bone distance apart. We're looking for the second and third toe to be as straight as possible, which will parallel the arches of your feet. The kneecap should be lining up, center the kneecap right down that shin bone, and right down into the first and second toe. It's a straight line. So we're just making that happen. You may have to press a little bit of energy. You may have a feeling as though the outside of your hips are turning inward a little bit, just to get that to accomplish. And then just letting your hand rest on the wall, looking down. I'm going to keep the kneecaps lined up with the second and third toe, and begin to lift your heels up off the ground just about as high as you can go. Watch the knees. My right knee wants to turn outward, so I'm really having to keep that right knee straight in line with the second and third toe. And then I'm going to come down about halfway, just letting the heel of my foot be about an inch or so off the ground. Watch those knees, second and third toe. Center the knee, just lining up as you take those heels back up into the air. And then slowly coming down. So this is very slow movement. Coming down about halfway, or about an inch above the ground. We all are lifting the heels in different heights. Watch the knee. My right knee keeps wanting to drift. We're looking for the foot to be very centered. Coming right up through the center, so the energy is underneath the pads where the second and third toe come into the foot. And then again, coming down. And then once you come down about a ½ inch or inch above the ground, we're just going to stay there. Keep those knees lined up with the second and third toe. And then we'll go ahead and lift up. Coming up, keeping the kneecaps lined up, staying in the center of the ball of the foot. So we're not under the big toe ball of the foot or the pinky side, right in the middle. Just Just remember where that bone was. And then slowly letting yourself come back down to the floor. So you're welcome to repeat that as much as you want. In the beginning, that might be enough. Since we're isolating so much, you may start to feel it in the back of your thigh or in places you're not used to feeling that kind of movement. So let's go ahead now and move into warrior. So letting the legs come comfortable distance apart. Everybody is different height, so we're going to all feel this a little differently, width-wise. I like to think about a leg length, so this is approximately my leg length. I'm 5 feet, so it's only going to go so far. My left toes are going to rotate just a little bit inward, just to give some relief on this left hip. And then the right toes turn out. Notice when I turn the right toes, I didn't turn my body. My hips are staying the same. This rotation is happening in the hip. So the right buttocks get engaged. I'm going to take that right knee until I can look over my right knee and get it lined up with my second and third toe. You even want to reach down and put your hand. I'm using my index finger and my middle finger on either side of that bone. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. Lifting the heel, pressing into the ball of the foot and the toes. Coming back down. And picking the ball of the foot up without letting that bone move. Putting it back down. Doing that 2 or 3 times. Down and up. And then we'll take the toes and turn them slightly outward without letting the ball of the foot, that bone move. And then sliding over the foot. It's going to move medially. Toes are moving to the left without letting the bone move. Do that 2 or 3 times. If you need to take a break and let that knee straighten out, your thigh muscle gets tired, that's fine. And then go ahead and come back, and then we'll do that full rotation without letting that bone move. Yeah, so feel the ball of the foot, press down a little bit if you need to reorient, and then rolling the toes out to the outside, picking it up, feeling that movement. Don't let take that, make sure the ball of the foot under the big toe comes to the ground also, and then reverse 2 or 3 times other way. Take a break. Bring your feet back underneath and maybe just walk a little bit, soften up the ankle. And then doing the other side. So again, just stop, pause, rewind, and follow the instructions for the left leg. And just stopping right about in there, I think that's a lot for the ankle to be doing. So let's just go ahead and stop right there. We'll find our way back into a simple tabletop. Letting the hands come comfortably underneath you and just curling your toes, letting yourself sit back into the heels, stretching the soles of the feet. And we'll go ahead and come all the way back up, bringing the blanket. If you'd like to, you can also do a few cat-cows there if your back is feeling a little tight. Sometimes when we learn something new, we hold a lot of that energy in the back or lower back especially. So if you need to do a few cat-cows there or a child's pose just to stretch out your lower back, please feel free to do that. And then we'll meet once again on the back. Finding the center of the back of the pelvis, shoulder blades in the center of the head. And then drawing knees in. As you exhale, inhale, we'll let both feet go up to the ceiling. Soft ankles, soft knee. And taking arms overhead. And exhaling again, bringing everything back. And again, inhaling, lifting. Couple more times, maybe 3 or 4 times here, just taking your time. Slowing down, soft elbows, soft knees. And the next time you find your knees coming in, letting your hands rest on those little bones again. If you'd like to, you can just get a little rock from side to side, just massaging the middle of the back. And then releasing feet to floor. So I would suggest, if you like to do legs up the wall today, just bring your mat over to the wall, letting your feet go up, letting the ankles completely relax. You'll be inviting the weight of your feet just to settle into the ankles, and all that settles into the knees until everything kind of ends up right into the hips and releasing into the pelvis. Or if you'd like to, you can bring your legs down the mat, bring a bolster underneath your mat, and taking your Shavasana from here, doing a really conscientious muscle progression, relaxation, starting at the soles of the feet and working your way up the legs, up into the body, until you can find your way out the fingertips and up through the crown of the head. And once you have found that release of muscle expression in the face and the jaw and the crown of the head, just inviting yourself to take your Shavasana for 6 to 10 minutes. If you would like to fall asleep, that can sometimes happen. But just most importantly, rest. And when you're finished, letting yourself take a few moments just to sit and then breathe. Thank you.